right, welcome to the ins and outs of emotions. I'm Meghan Heffner. I am a chemical health specialist with the Youth Service Bureau. And what is the Youth Service Bureau? So Youth Service Bureau helps youth and families learn the skills they need to be more successful at home, in school, and throughout their community. Some of the services we offer are youth-focused family counseling, diversion services, including awareness classes, youth and family education, and school-based chemical health. We're located in Cottage Grove, Stillwater, and Woodbury, and you can connect with us by our website, email, or Facebook. So today, as we talk about the ins and outs of emotions, we hope that we can help guide students to help name their emotions, gain some coping skills, and to share with parents some of the resources available in your community. Some of the important basics, as we learned last time regarding emotions, is that all emotions are okay. It's how we express them that matters. All of us feel and express emotions differently. Emotions can be triggered by something happening inside of you or outside of you. Emotions come in different intensities, as we know. And it's certainly possible to experience more than one emotion at the same time. And every one of us needs to work on regulating our emotions, even us adults. So as a parent, as we learned last time, as a parent, we want to help children identify their emotions. And then from there, we want to help validate those emotions. So now that we've given them the language, we can really help them understand what the emotions feel like. So what does disgust feel like? What does fear feel like? What do they look like when we express them? What do they sound like? And so we're gonna go through and talk about how we feel emotions in our body. And so right now, I'd like you to take a look at this video about the science behind emotions and how they come about in our bodies, how it connects with our brains and our bodies and our emotions and our environments.
Think back to the last time you had a feeling all the feels moment. Maybe it was when you finished reading this really great book about, I don't know, two teenagers with cancer who fall in love and it basically ripped your heart out and what, I'm not sobbing, you're sobbing. Or maybe it was when you got engaged or that day when everything went wrong. Whatever it was, it gave you some really strong feelings. But how did you know what you were feeling? Feeling that something is hot or cold or a soft, fluffy kitty makes intuitive sense. You're touching a physical thing and it's going to feel a particular way. But emotions are way less straightforward. So where do they come from? Let's just say the psychologists have all the feels about that one. Even defining emotion is tricky. Like, we all know that cold is a feeling and that it isn't an emotion the way sadness is. But it's hard to explain the difference. So one of the things psychologists have tried to do is identify a few key parts of experiencing emotion. There's obviously the part where you feel, along with a cognitive piece, which involves being aware of the feeling. There's also something motivational, like when fear makes you want to run away from the giant hairy spider in your basement as fast as your legs will carry you. Then there's a physiological response, like the racing heart and sweaty palms that accompanies said fear. And there's a motor response, say when you do actually hightail it out of there. The debate is really about which of these components are part of the emotion itself and which are a cause of it or a consequence of it. It's kind of a chicken and the egg situation. What causes what, and is there an order in which things happen? Over the years, psychologists have come up with a bunch of different theories about this. The James Lange theory, proposed in the late 19th century, says that a physiological response happens when you perceive something, and the emotion is your reaction to that response. So it's not that you cry because you're sad because you cry. This is actually pretty similar to a more recent theory known as the facial feedback theory. It argues that the way you're holding your facial muscles when you make facial expressions can actually cause you to feel emotions more strongly. But there were a lot of criticisms of the James Lange theory. The biggest problem was that particular physical responses don't always indicate the same emotions. You can tremble from fear, sure, but also from rage or from cold. So how do you tell which emotion is supposed to come from the physical response? Maybe you're just really super angry at that spider. The Cain and Bard theory, which was proposed in the 1920s, was pretty much a rebuttal to James Lang. It argues that emotional responses are too fast to be the result of a physical reaction that happens first. Instead, it suggests that the physical response and subjective experience of emotion happen in parallel at the same time. When you first see the spider crawling out from the corner, sensory information about the encounter arrives at your thalamus, a region of the brain involved in coordinating signals. Then the thalamus sends out a signal to your peripheral nervous system that triggers all the physical stuff and also sends the signal that triggers all the feels. That would explain why the physical response happens at the same time as you feel the emotion. And if they're separate signals, it would also explain why trembling when you're cold doesn't necessarily make you afraid. But neither of those ideas, that emotions follow a physical response or that they happen in parallel, say anything about how your actual thoughts play into all of this. That's where the two-factor theory of emotion comes in, also known as the Schachter-Singer theory, after the researchers who first proposed it in the 1960s. The idea is that we use circumstances to attribute our physical reactions to certain emotions. Those are the two factors: your physical response and how you label it. If your heart's pounding and that spider's ominously crawling towards you, you know to interpret that as fear. But if your heart's pounding because you've just been to the gym and there's no spider, then you're probably good. No fear necessary. To put their theory to the test, the researchers injected people with adrenaline, then put them in situations that were either supposed to make them laugh or make them feel super frustrated and angry. Subjects who knew that the adrenaline would give them a racing heart and sweaty palms didn't report feeling any emotion because they blamed their reaction on the drug. But if they didn't know, they attributed feeling all jumpy to the situation they were put in, hilarious or upsetting, and reported feeling real emotions associated with those scenarios. In the decades since Schachter and Singer first proposed their idea, researchers have come up with other cognitive theories of emotion too. Some of them aren't as focused on interpreting a physiological response. Instead, they argue that your emotions depend on what you think the impact of a situation will be. For example, you might get angry when you judge that you've been treated unfairly. So there are lots of different theories for how our emotions work, but it's hard to know whether any of them can fully explain how and why we feel the things we do. Emotions are just messy, and whatever objective measures of emotion you might want to use in experiments, like heart rate, don't always line up with what someone's actually feeling. But the next time you run into that spider in your basement, at least you'll have some idea of how your feelings might be connected to your physical response and cognition. Something to think about while you're running back up the stairs. Thanks for watching this episode of SciShow Psych. If you're interested in learning more about the mix-ups that can happen when you...
All right, and so that video really taught us that how our brains and our bodies connect with emotion. And so we really want to help our kids understand what these emotions feel like for us. And when we can understand what our feelings, what our emotions feel like, we can better gauge things that might help us, or to stop it before they get too intense, or to ask for help. And so we want to again, help our kids understand what they're feeling to better able to cope with them. So let's begin with joy. So what does joy feel and look like? And for everybody, it's going to be totally different. Do we have butterflies in our stomach, or do our hands feel, do they feel hot or cold? Are they tense? Everybody's a little bit different. Do we feel it in our feet? Do we have racing thoughts because we're so excited about something? Is our heart pumping? Is our adrenaline going? So joy can mean all sorts of different things for different people. And then the next is sadness. So normally with sadness, we have low energy. So what does our body feel like when we're sad? Do we have that low energy? Is our pulse rate lower? Or maybe the grief is so much where we can get that kind of pit in our stomach. Do our muscles tense up? And again, it's going to feel different for everybody. So anger. Anger is one that really gets kids talking, because they can talk about how like their fists get clenched, or their heartbeat is going faster, or they're getting hot. They have all these different thoughts in their head, or maybe their feet feel heavy. So again, another emotion that we're all going to feel differently, but some of those same sensations can be similar across people, but also different at the same time. And as we mentioned in the first video, that the intensities of how we all feel the emotions are going to be different as well as the area or the type of sensation. Next, fear. So fear is a lot of times, again, people will feel, kids will talk about butterflies in their stomach, or maybe they have a knot in their stomach. Maybe their palms are sweating. Maybe they get rosy cheeks, or they start to pace. And so helping kids identify, when they are, I notice you're pacing right now. Are you anxious about something? Or I notice that you are holding your stomach. Are you scared about something? And so as adults, we can really pay attention to what our kids are showing us, so we can help them identify what they might be feeling, because sometimes they aren't aware. And then discuss. Same thing, we want to help kids understand where we're feeling the different emotions. So maybe it's somebody they don't care for, or they don't like a food. And so a lot of times, we think of disgust in our stomach. So, let's not talk about that, I'm eating. Or something smells bad. A lot of times, again, we experience disgust in our stomach, but we can obviously experience those in different areas as well. And then surprise is our last one here. Surprise, maybe you surprise your child at school, or maybe they got a really fun present that they were hoping for. And so they are going to maybe, that increased heart rate, or maybe their thoughts again are racing, or maybe they have lots of energy and they're fidgety and things like that. All those can come with surprise, as well as the other emotions as well. And so I just want to talk about a book called Listening to My Body. And you're welcome to go check that out at your library or on YouTube. And it's a really awesome book to help kids learn about how our emotions feel in our body. So everything from riding a roller coaster for the first time, or when we're sad, that crying can help us make us feel better, or we might need a tight squeeze. And so not only how the feelings feel in our body, but what our bodies might need in a response to those different feelings. And then next is just a little fun game that you can check out. It's called Guess the Feelings, and just another follow-up activity you can do after watching the movie Inside Out, and have your kids guess the emotion based on what she's experiencing. So what I'd like for parents to do with their kids is to go through this chart when there's time, and it doesn't have to be written. It can be a simple conversation. So to help your kids really lay out what they experience when they feel different things, not only for their own well-being, but you as a parent then can again be aware of it and pay attention to it to help point it out when those feelings are coming about for a child. So go through the different emotions. What do they feel like? What do they look like? What do they sound like? So not only what do they look like in our bodies, but how are we expressing them? What can parents see? Do they see kids turning red? Do they see their kid having clenched fist? Do they see them holding their stomach? Do they see them with lots of energy or low energy? And then to help kind of make it more real, to talk about memories that are associated with those feelings, to give them, oh yeah, when I was excited about my birthday party, I was pacing and I couldn't stop moving, and my heart was beating fast, or I was smiling really big, and just paying attention to those things. And so they can remember a time when they experienced it. So the next time they can remember, oh yeah, this is what joy is. Oh yeah, this is what fear is. And then we can move along to that in the next podcast is, what do we do when we, oh yeah, this is fear. Now what do I do? How do I make it better? How do I make this manageable? Because again, all feelings are okay. It's what we do with them that matters, not only for ourselves, but in our relationship with others. And then some more look at just some books about identifying emotions and what they may feel like for kids. Some really great resources you can check out at your library. And then continue to check us out on YouTube, share our information with others, things that you learned, and our resources available. And thanks again, and tune in for the next podcast about the ins and outs of emotions.